which is his narrative voice, and that voice is just simply descriptions and poetry and proverbs and prose and things that he drops. He peppers it out, kind of the breadcrumbs that lead us back to the original argument, leads us back to where it all began. And that helps anchor us throughout the book. And the point of these anchors is to point us to truth, is to point us to what are the things that God says that are absolute? What are the guideposts in life? What are these kerns that we see, or cairns that we see over and peppered out throughout this book? Because otherwise, it'd be very, very easy to get lost. We've talked a little bit about philosophy and philosophers and what different philosophers have said. Tonight, we're going to be focusing in on a very specific philosophy that predominates our culture today, and that is the philosophy of hedonism. Now, there are two forms of hedonism, and as far as we know, Epicurus, who's a philosopher, Greek philosopher from a long time ago, he was the one who really helped develop this philosophy of life. And there are two sides to it. The first side is individual hedonism. It's essentially that everything that I do is for myself. In other words, my own happiness in life should be my highest aim. And everything that I do ought to achieve that one aim, that one goal. If I am happy, then all is good. And then there's another form of hedonism, which is not egotistical, but it's collective, saying that we really ought to aim to the highest happiness to the most people at the same time. As long as the most people at the same time are happy, then all is good. We've really achieved this other goal. Now, both of them are absolutely false. They're totally wrong. So even if you're thinking of hedonism in an altruistic sense, like everybody being happy at the same time, happiness should never be the goal and the aim of Christian living. And the reason is that many times God calls us to things that do not result in happiness. There are many things that God is going to call us to do that are unpleasant and hard and are not going to make us joyful or happy. But we live to please Him and Him alone. So the philosophy of today is whatever makes me happy individually. It's not even an altruistic sense. It's not even a collective sense. Whatever makes me happy, whatever satisfies my desires and my outlook and my plan for life, that is the highest aim. And we have seen this actually sneak into Christian and biblical theology when you have people who say that our highest aim, your most important thing that you should be able to accomplish at the end of this life, is a good life in eternity. So maybe you're not thinking, well, my highest aim is happiness here on earth. It's your highest aim is happiness in eternity. That is also hedonistic. Because our happiness in eternity is also not the aim. That might be an outcome of God's blessing, but it's not the aim. The aim for eternity will always be the glory of God. Always. And what we find is that the glory of God is where we find satisfaction because we were made to worship Him. Now, I know I'm kind of playing on the edges of John Piper's book with Christian hedonism. I'm not actually moving that direction. That's not what I'm getting at. It's just that when we share the gospel with people, it should not be with the point and the aim to say, hey, if you accept Christ, everything will be great in this life. Or if you accept Christ, everything will be great for you in eternity. But instead, you need Christ because God is just and holy. It's always about Him. Ultimately, always goes back to Him. So let's read on here in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, starting in verse 1. Remember, he's been exploring these different ideas of how to find meaning in life, right? The meaning of life. And what we find is that a chasing after the wind is actually this idea of an enigma, something that you can't actually use to explain life. You can't use it to unlock the secrets of life. It's not a secret passcode or anything like that. I said in my heart, "Come now, I will test you with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure." But surely this also was vanity. So he's setting his premise. Now he's saying this in his heart. He's setting out a premise. This is very scientific. I'm going to actually go out and test these ideas in real practice, in real life. But this is what he's telling himself. Certainly this will also end up being an enigma. It will not give me the answer that I'm looking for. I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, what does it accomplish? Again, premises that he's setting forth. Now, madness is not in the sense of like insanity, but almost like silliness. Like, what is the ultimate point of laughter? I kid you not, there are many books written about laughter when it comes to the character of God. We only see God really laughing in one text of Scripture, and that's in Psalm chapter 2. And it's in the sense of mocking. He's laughing at the world as they try to raise up this ulterior throne, setting against his own throne. He laughs at them. Their plans, they're not going to come to pass. Part of humor is being surprised, but the other part of humor is that it has a piece of truth, an element of truth in it. If it doesn't have an element of truth, then it's not funny. But if it does, then it kind of tickles us. And so there are certain things about God's characteristic that laughter just doesn't make any sense in that way. You hear people all the time, I literally all the time when they're talking about creation, you don't think God has a sense of humor? Look at the giraffe. I think that's the silliest thing ever. It's more like, look how amazing this creature is, not this sense of humor or anything like that. Like God has just built in jokes in creation or something. But this is what he's saying, that, at the end of the day, laughter, and at the end of the day, mirth, that's intense happiness, I just know it's going to not accomplish anything. I know that it's not going to answer my big question. I searched in my heart, again, focusing on the heart. So again, he's saying these things within himself. I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold of folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men, to do under heaven all the days of their lives. Now, when he says he's being guided by wisdom here, he's not talking about the wisdom that we see in like Proverbs. This is not proverbial wisdom. The wisdom that he's talking about here is his set goal. It's his scientific exploration. So you can almost put quotes around those. I used wisdom, in other words, my own wisdom, my own ideas, to try to find out the end of these things. And he's planning it out. He's really putting in the work. And it might seem really odd that somebody would speak in this way. But as an intellectual pursuit, he wants to actually, truly experience these things. And he comes up with a plan. How is he going to do this? Well, I'm going to try entertainment. I'm going to try laughter and mirth. I'm going to try alcohol. We'll see if that gives me the answer that I'm looking for. And then he says this next. I made my works great. So now he's moving from this kind of entertainment portion to things that we would say have far more value. And what he's going to talk about is building and creating things. And they're specifically for his own pleasure. It's very, very self-focused. Listen to what he says. I made my works great. I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards. I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had great possessions of herds and flocks, that all who were in Jerusalem, more than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the special treasures of kings and of provinces. I acquired male and female singers, and the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds. So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. In other words, I use this scientific sort of method throughout the whole thing. It's kind of like carrying a notebook around you and taking notes, right? That's kind of what he's saying here. What's really fascinating about this passage is that there are so many allusions to the Garden of Eden and so many allusions to Genesis chapter 1. I made this, I made this, I made this. I planted gardens. There are trees of various kinds. Exact word usage in some instances. Now, if it was just one or two places, you might not think anything of it, but it actually occurs so often in this passage that if you were somebody who had been raised, as a Jewish man or a Jewish woman, you would recognize these references instantly. And what I think that he's getting at is, I'm trying to reproduce paradise. I'm trying to get to the place, like trying to organize and get to the place where my life is as close to paradise, as close to Eden as possible. And this is really the central point of hedonism, is that you want paradise, but you don't want God there. You want pleasure, but you don't want somebody telling you what to do. And so, just like many atheists in their lives, they would love heaven, but they don't want God. They don't want anything to do with him. They don't want redemption. They don't want Christ, but they would love pleasure. They would love paradise. If they could have all of those things, that would be the ultimate goal. Just leave God out of it. And so he goes through and he does all of these things. Probably actually does things literally. It gets all kinds of concubines and he enjoys all kinds of pleasures. And at the end of the day, like what Kemp said, is that once you get what you want, you're just looking for the next thing. It's like you get that thing at Christmas, and then suddenly all you can think about is the next thing. There's no real satisfaction with what you have received, because there's no satisfaction to be gained in the pursuits of pleasure. It doesn't last. It's temporary. And we know in light of eternity, all of these things are completely and utterly useless and without any eternal value except what God will use to judge us by. Then he dives into this poem here. He has a short prose that he wants to introduce us to. And this is what he says. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor. Another key theme, trying to get satisfaction even out of work, right? Organization. Angela's actually been doing a little bit of gardening, and she's found, strangely, that she really likes it. She loves just organizing, just getting all those weeds out and everything looking really, really nice. But the comment is always going to come up a week later, especially if there's a rainfall. Where did all these weeds come back from? Why is it that we can't get satisfaction from anything that we do? Because we live in a cursed world. Nothing lasts. You can organize all you want. If you left it alone for a month, it would be a complete disaster again. I recall a time that I was hiking with my dad and my best friend up Mount Olympus in Utah, not the one in Greece. So we're climbing up Mount Olympus, and my dad makes this comment. He's like, isn't it just beautiful out here? Like, yeah, it is. It's really beautiful. It's like, is there anything that you could see that you'd want to change about any of this? It's like, well, no, I wouldn't want to change anything. They talked about artists and how they're one of their greatest pursuits, or one of their beginning pursuits at least, is to just replicate through art what we see in nature. And the more closely that you replicate it, the better your art really is, the greater value it has. And then he started talking about gardening at home. Why is it that we try so hard to garden just so that we can mimic what we see naturally, what we see in nature? We're trying to mimic it. But out in nature, there's no person running around trying to organize it all. God just made it, and it grows, and it's beautiful. Try as we might, we will never be able to replicate paradise. Because in our own garden, we carry the curse with us. Try as we might, our lives will always be short of what God's glory actually creates. But he brings up labor again. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor. And this was my reward from all my labor. Is just at the very end of the day, I look at it and say, wow, look at what I created. Isn't this amazing? I feel good about this. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled. And indeed, again, proving his premise from the very beginning, all was vanity, or we're using the word, all was an enigma and a shepherding of the wind. There was no profit under the sun. So even in the pursuit of self-satisfaction and happiness, what does Solomon discover? It's still an enigma, and it's still like shepherding the wind. Why is that? Why is it that he can have the intellectual and studious mind that he has to go out and to really test this one idea that he has, this one question, this one hypothesis? And in everything, he says, it's a shepherding after the wind. Well, we already know the answer because we've read the book, right? We've read it from beginning and end. We've seen the Bible from beginning to end. And it comes down to this, that anybody who lives for themselves will gain nothing in the end. For what does it profit a man that he gain the world and forfeiteth his own soul? Eternity. It matters not in our happiness, but in God's glory. If you seek God's glory, then you will find the meaning and the enigma of life. And that is all satisfaction is found in him. That's really the truth of the matter. We are at a critical point in our culture right now where people are trying so hard to find happiness because they want to be their own God. And they want to change who they are, even if it's physically. They want to do something that will satisfy. They will never find satisfaction in those things. But as Christians, we should be ready to share with them the very thing and the only thing that will ever fill the vacuum in their soul. People are hurting. They're lost. Today I was at a meeting with Kevin Hahn. You might have met him when he was here with CEF in the tent. And he was talking to us, he introduced us to a guy who runs an organization, or he's not runs an organization, but he promotes an organization called Sports World. And it's an organization that brings out Christian athletes who are retired athletes, professional athletes. And they give talks and assemblies, and they share their testimony. If the school is okay with it. If not, then they go to a local church and they share their testimony there, and they invite the kids to come over and listen to that. And he handed a bunch of cards to us that were cards of just things that kids had questions about, things that are going on inside them, things that they were thinking about. So many of those cards were filled with kids who wanted to commit suicide. Because the world doesn't have any answer. And it doesn't matter what you teach. It doesn't matter what you try to fill your pursuits with. If it's not God, it will not satisfy. We have the answer. Let's look at a few. I guess we only had 2 prayer requests specifically tonight. The first is pray for the carpenters. As you know, mind is going blank here. Yeah, Laverne's dad passed away. And apparently one of the girls or one of them had picked up COVID. So that's something that's been going around. So just pray for that family specifically. Pray for Pastor Dan as he heads out. He's going to be gone for a week. So I'll be preaching Sunday morning. The passage that he really didn't want to preach. And that's Genesis chapter 38 with Judah and Tamar. I enjoy that passage so much, I've probably preached it maybe 5 times. It's one of my favorites. So he said, go for it. He didn't really look forward to preaching on that. So I'll be preaching this Sunday, but he's going to be traveling to Colorado, and it's a vacation that had been planned sometime before, whitewater rafting. But not really dangerous whitewater rafting. He was very disappointed that they're going to where they're going because he wanted the really dangerous stuff. All 30-year-olds say that. Then you get to our age and we're like, fishing's fine. The only kind of fishing that I love is stream fishing. I do not like lake fishing. I do not like, stream fishing anywhere in Iowa. I don't like stream fishing in Iowa. The silt is so thick, it kind of grosses me out. No offense. But he's going to be, I guess, fishing in some of the best fishing spots ever and whitewater rafting and everything. But just pray for his safety, that no complications or anything weird happens while they're rafting, and that they're very safe. Pray he has a good time. I think Megan is also traveling, so pray for her as well. Are there any other prayer requests that we have? Yes. Yeah. All right, so we'll continue to pray for your brother. Yes, Catherine. Okay, great. Yeah. So we'll pray that an interest will peak. It's a tough crowd in this world these days with a Christian worldview. Dr. Kober. Yes, be praying for the conference this weekend. I've read through a little bit of the content, kind of peeked at it. It's going to be very, very encouraging. If you know people in your neighborhood or anybody that might be interested in end times, our neighbor right next door. His son is super interested, and he's been teaching him the Bible even though he doesn't know the Bible. So hopefully we can invite them over, and they'd be interested in doing that. So pray specifically for Greg, and I can't remember his son's name, but they have an increased interest in that. And we know that Jehovah's Witnesses have hit our neighborhood, so we want to make sure that we get a hold of them before the JWs do. Yeah. Yeah, praise God. I mean, the flying's got to be better than the driving, right? I don't know if Brazil is anywhere like Lima, but Lima was just like, man, that was an experience. When a Kumbi gave birth to a bunch of Americans, it was miraculous that we were able to get out. Asher, did you have a prayer request? Amen. Yes. Yes, and now that everybody is fully equipped in our Sunday school class, right, to share the gospel with JWs, yeah, pray for those Jehovah's Witnesses and those Mormon missionaries, for sure. All right, yes, Danny. Yeah, that's the dream job, right? Yep. Pray that Danny lands the physical. I can't imagine how they're going to have you run 20 flights of stairs and with a respirator on your back. And all right. So pray that the physical goes well with Danny and that he's able to get that job. That would be wonderful. So if you just want to split up into different groups, and if you have any more prayer requests, you can go ahead and just share your prayer requests with each other, and we'll spend the rest of the evening praying. Oh, and Tobias, yes, don't forget about Tobias. Again, he's here like every 5 or 6 months. I hadn't seen him for almost a year and a half the last time I saw him. Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah, it seems that he kind of moves in different areas, and so you see him more often than other times. Oh, right back here, one more prayer request. Okay. Yeah, he came looking for soap. He came looking for soap today. Yeah. 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 So pray for Tobias. He's got a lot that he's fighting through. He needs to get off drugs. It would help him out a lot. So praying for him.